Brilliant ideas, powered by Hyundai Motor.
The contemporary art world is vibrant and booming as never before. It's a 21st century phenomenon, a global industry in its own right. Brilliant Ideas looks at the artists at the heart of this. Artists with unique power to astonish, challenge and surprise. In this programme, UK-based artist Danny Lane. Danny Lane is an American artist working out of a large studio in West London. From here, he makes epic works in glass, steel and wood.
Hey, watch that fiber, dudes!
Danny's work is elusive. He deploys not only tricks of the eye and tricks of light, but tricks of the imagination.
As he shuns fame and the limelight, you're unlikely to know who he is. Danny doesn't have an army of PR people or even a gallery to represent him. He's a maverick who rarely does media.
Danny is not really interested in the commercial world. He's interested in challenges. So he would be interested in a challenge for a very large-scale sculpture, not for what it brings to him as far as fame or money.
Despite his low profile, Danny's works are high in demand, his sculptures influential in art and design, and he has a unique approach to life, as we'll discover.
Danny, for me, is larger than life. He's a character that works on a massive scale, but also on a really intimate scale.
I think he's creatively intriguing, and I think he's technically pioneering.
He's a very important sculptor. I don't really know anybody else who works quite like him.
I always work live, drawing with the material. Let's get a little coffee here. However, the essence and all of the thought comes from the free-drawn approach. I have to have a pencil in my hand in order to have an idea. And it's important to explore one's own darker territory. Just working in and around this new thing of these shards of glass. I've used this sort of image of a face, an eye, with some radiation coming from it. I have always worked on what I'd call an easel technique of putting a piece on the wall. Somebody who comes from drawing and painting is very familiar with. I believe it was Krishnamurti's quote, "If you see the Buddha on the road, kill him." Because if it looks like something I've seen before, well, there's no point in discovering penicillin twice.
Danny was born in Urbana, Illinois, but travelled around the States with his scientist father and art historian mother, spending a formative part of his childhood in New York City.
We used to spend a lot of time sitting on the steps of Soho at late-night parties that our parents were going to, full of artists. It was a beautiful time. You'd see Jimi Hendrix walking down the street, Bob Dylan and Joan Baez having their debut performances around the corner. New York was very free and open-spirited. As a child, we'd just take the subway all over the city. I would go to art classes at the Museum of Modern Art and make small sculptures. It was so full of life. I mean, it was a real renaissance in American culture. Probably never to happen again. I dropped out of school at an early age. You know, had quite a good life in the counterculture, traveling across the United States. Great experience of being arrested, and as a 14-year-old, I used to be out on the street leafleting to protest the war at numerous times, you know, going to all of these big protests in Washington. One of the most important parts of my development were the last 4 or 5 years that I lived in the United States. And that's really what drove me to the UK.
Danny sought a new direction and purpose. He was drawn to England at the start of the punk era.
mid-70s, was a period in England that was very interesting. You do have to bang people over the head to shake the truth up. And I think we need our bad boys. I think we need our rebels. I'm missing the rebels. You know, nowadays, it's horrendous. It's a nanny state. What's that going to get us? You know, I think the risks are healthy.
The counterculture was all the rage, but what drew Danny to England was the art of stained glass windows.
I intuitively became fascinated with glass. You see a harmony between all of the architecture, the sculpture, the glass. Everything had a tremendous craft, art, and design value.
His tutor was world-renowned stained glass artist Patrick Wrenchen, whose work featured in the rebuild of Coventry Cathedral.
A true Renaissance man. I'd say he's the only person remaining who is a genuine medieval stained glass artist. The technical processes in making stained glass are extremely archaic. They're 10th century. And Patrick, who saw me struggling with this, said, you know, Danny, this process, if you can in any way engineer things so that you can just go to art college and study painting, study drawing, this will change your life. And all I did throughout art college was draw, and paint. But primarily drawing became the most important thing to me.
This fine art approach would stay with Danny and would shape his work to come.
Ideas.
American sculptor Danny Lane came to England to study fine arts and stayed on, building up his client base. His passion for glass would never leave him. It's a material that endlessly fascinates him. Danny was now on his way to becoming one of the most distinctive artists working in glass sculpture.
You can't write the history of sculpture ignoring the use of glass, and you can't write the history of glass sculpture without giving Danny Lane a major position in it. He has the ambition of a Renaissance virtuoso. That's clear in all of his work, and in the sheer inventiveness and versatility. That will make his work last.
Risk is part of life. It's what brings a human being to attention. Fear is not just fear. It brings all of your focus into one place.
Always seeking a new challenge, Danny's been constantly inventive with new ways to shape glass, a material which is beautiful and dangerous at the same time.
I began to use this hammer chip as a method of shaping glass, and it brought light into the material. So this flaw became a very important signature in my work for many years, and still is today. I've tried to get away from it, but it's so beautiful I can't leave it alone. Something that has prismatic shape and organic, there's just no way to form something like that. The material itself is the drawing.
Back in the 1980s, contemporary design was on the rise, and Danny began creating unusual furniture pieces using glass.
Well, I produced a number of objects, glass chairs, which nobody had seen before. These were more sculptures of chairs, something that you would buy as a symbolic piece. And these things began to get seen, and that was the time when the public first really began to see my work.
I got to know Danny Lane when he was in Camden Lock, exhibiting in this very commercial market some amazing pieces which were quite spectacular. You would have at the same time this kind of roughness that was quite foreign to design, especially at the time where people were still thinking taste equals period furniture. So it was something completely new, completely undiscovered and uncharted territories.
Lily Ann's gallery soon put on a one-man show of Danny's work. This attracted curators from London's Victoria and Albert Museum, the world's largest dedicated to decorative arts and design.
The V&A was especially interested in the stacked glass chair, which creates the refraction of light in a very strange way. You have this kind of ambiguity about glass where you can see through but not quite see through. So the V&A bought this chair and eventually went on to commission Danny Lane for the balustrading of their new glass gallery in the museum.
We thought he was a very interesting artist. He was always trying to push the boundaries, work in a bigger way. He seemed the perfect person to ask for this, really. Dysfunctional in the way that it prevents you falling off the mezzanine or the stairs, but it's actually a fantastic piece of sculpture, and so it really belongs here. It gives fantastic distortions and a wonderful light play, and that's what glass is all about.
Danny's work was now being collected, and he was fast becoming known for his unusual techniques of breaking edges and stacking glass held together with a steel bar. The method he calls shish kebabbing. This success spurred him into new ways of sculpting.
This piece is called Angaraib. Image came on television of a child waking up on a rope bed in the Sudan. And I thought, my God, that's the type of bed I would like, is this child sleeping out of doors or waking up in the sun. And I thought of the structures that the American Indians would pull behind a horse, and they'd take their family and all of their belongings as they traveled. And there had just been the storm in London where I'd seen a plane tree. I went down there with a chainsaw and cut the tree and busily got people in the studio to make several hundred of these. And I just threw the glass on, and it all locked into place, just like that.
It reminds me, and this is probably not what he had in mind, of Henry Moore's Sleeping Figures, of a Picasso reclining nude. There's obviously no figure, but it has that suggestion of a figure. It feels like a body.
And it's quite possible to, lie on it. It's, not uncomfortable if you, need to, you could sleep on it.
Today, Danny still makes sculptural furniture, and with each commission, like this oak table, he explores new ways to treat the material, creating unique pieces in the process.
We've got big toys here, so the idea is there's no point in making tiny things with all this space, so build this big machine for twisting metal and then think, oh, what are we going to make with that? I'm actually absorbed in the process of the material.
We're losing too much heat up there, so what we're going to do is pull this back.
That live process, which is a very expensive process, it requires a lot of space. It requires a lot of labor.
We're going to bend an RSJ. We're going to twist it in a knot. And basically, we're heating this up with a couple of bottles of propane and 15 bottles of oxygen. So we're throwing some energy into it. It's the first brush stroke of a composition. And we never know how far it's going to go. And it's actually quite a lot of fun. Okay, go plug that up. Get your gloves and things, yeah? Okay, go ahead. Go.
Danny's nicely chaotic. Someone with a sharp intellect who got a quizzical mind, but also a natural feel for the natural elements of the materials. He's got a slightly warped mind which twists these things as well, so it's never quite as pure as, say, a craftsman's approach, but it's crafty art.
One more! Michael, we're going to level out and then hook.
Very few artists still do their own work. Danny still does everything himself. He's lucky, because if not, he would have to give the work out to some foundry or something like this. There are not many people who are doing that. People should understand that. It's really made by Danny.
Go until you can't go no more. Hey, watch that fiber, dudes.
Danny's constant need to experiment means he's always looking for bigger challenges. He's been commissioned to make huge public art around the world. Danny's individual approach means he continues to be highly sought after by both private clients and giant corporations for creative architectural sculpture.
Quite a piece of bending, isn't it? Who's going to do the ceremonial piss on it?
Most clients come to me because that live energy, by tolerating that in the design process, we have to establish a trust. I trust them, they trust me, and then we'll go for this tremendous adventure.
Bravo. We'll do another one in a half an hour, okay? Okay?
A recent commission for British Land saw him create an unusual window sculpture.
What we wanted to do was effectively create an eye-catching piece on the corner of the Edgware Road that you would see as you come up from Hyde Park. And because it's part of a public art contribution as well, we wanted it to give something back to the streetscape and the landscape, as well as obviously be a feature for the building. I think Danny's first description of it was, imagine a plate glass window that someone's thrown a brick through the middle of. You could take the approach that that's quite a scary thing for an artist to tell you as a developer, that that's the right thing for what is effectively a big plate glass window. But actually, when we then got under the skin of what he was envisaging, we got very excited.
Everybody loves the sculpture. It defies classification or description. When you ask people what it is, everybody comes up with something different. Somebody will maybe say reminds them of a DNA strand, and somebody else will say no, it's rock, and somebody else will say, well, I see a waterfall, and the answers are sufficiently varied that I think we can accept this is not something you can easily label. For me, what the work says about its context in Microsoft is that it's a combination of art and science, art and engineering, and that chimes beautifully with what we do here.
A major theme running through much of Danny's work is the divided structure, a split or tear in the body of the piece, a work of two halves. But none perhaps is more majestic than his monumental foyer piece at London's Canary Wharf.
The technical side is amazing. The way that it has been set up, and you have the feeling that it is the sea which is opening up in front of you, is the scale. The way that it defies the imagination, how such a huge weight can still give you a feeling of lightness. And I like it because, in fact, it epitomizes for me the immense quality that Danny has.
Ideas.
Danny Lane may not be a household name, but he's a highly sought-after and collected sculptor. He's produced large-scale public artworks and been displayed in London's Victoria and Albert Museum. But the real motivation for Danny is the urge to experiment and take creative risks.
You know, this whole process is very beautiful. However, now I've gotten to a point where I also just want to make pieces. If you're just eating one type of food all the time, you start to long for another type. Only now am I really entertaining the idea of exhibiting and doing shows in galleries. I want to go back into the materials and let the ideas flow. And what I've got here in the studio now are the beginnings of this new work.
Yeah, it's all probably necessary because this plaster gives off a phenomenal amount of dust. It's like sandblasting.
I'm moving into a thing of cutting into these rough materials, and instead of using plaster to cast and print a shape, I think live into the material.
Danny's new direction involves experimenting with a series of entirely new sculptural works aimed for possible exhibition. These are uncommissioned, so Danny has complete freedom over both the process and the end product.
Enables a spontaneity which gives the object life, gives it its aura, gives it its whole sense of being. That, to me, is fresh.
Danny forces you to try out different angles, different points of view. So it's a very, very active, very physical relationship with sculpture.
We'll take large chunks of glass, arrange them on this piece of plaster, put them into the kiln, and melt it. And all of these shapes will be made in positive form in the glass. It's quite an adventure. It's something entirely new that, for me, and therefore I'm quite excited about it. It's very interesting.
Stacks of glass are placed over the relief before entering the kiln to melt into the plaster.
Hey, how do you turn this thing on?
It takes 20 hours of slow melting, then 2 whole weeks to cool down, before Danny and his team can check whether it's been a successful cast.
That's the slow push. Let's see what we got in here. Looking good. It's not cracked. What do you think? So we just stack the steel. But we didn't get as many bubbles as I would have expected. It's the first time we've done this, so. I'm not trying to make anything perfect. They would get cracks in them and they would break. But I'm leaving those pieces broken and trying to figure out now, how can I show this object? Everybody working in these materials is scared of these breaks. That's fine. Let go. Okay, let go completely. Is it going to fall forward? Let go, everybody. Look, everybody, relax. Look, okay? Watch. Just watch. You can't move that. I'm focusing on things that I can do in this context right now. It's very exciting. The combination of these deeply carved shapes and the actual relief, the undercuts, it's very harmonic because it was done gesturally. These strange little fingers, all in relief. And the way the radius catches the light, the glass, in fact, almost has a grain to it, like timber or something. It has a nice reference with very ancient traditions of stone carving. There's a lot to look at it. The mic keeps moving around. It's quite Baroque, in fact. It's a real surprise, and the fact that it is a surprise is a great relief and quite pleasing to me, because really the better works happen despite oneself. It's a very good step in this new direction for these new pieces. So it's very successful, and now we can go ahead and apply it to different types of glass. Respect of the unknown. It's a healthy thing. It feels good. And that exploration that an artist pursues is the same thing as what a scientist does. And when we discover something, we can bring it back from where we found it and show it to the world. And hopefully that's of value.
Brilliant ideas, powered by Hyundai Motor.